Hello, welcome back MMA fans. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to go over some crazy fights that almost happened. Most of these did almost kind of happen. There are a couple that were a bit looser, but some of these were booked. Some of these, if a couple fighters had won a fight or not, it would have been the next one. Let's get straight into it. The first one is a crazy one, and it's Ilia Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett. If you guys remember this was crazy. These guys had beef. This was like 2 years ago, in 2022 or some shit. And these guys had some altercations. It was, I think, the event where Ilia Topuria fought Jai Herbert. And I think Paddy might have been on the card. I'm not sure. Something like that. And they had a couple altercations. And it got kind of big, the whole rumor. And these guys were kind of at similar positions in their career. Paddy was a big name entering the UFC, submitting guys. Ilia was just knocking guys out. And at the time, people were like, oh, no. Paddy might be big. Topuria might beat up Pimblett. I'm pretty sure most were leaning Topuria, but some people definitely did lean Pimblett. And a lot of people considered it competitive. And giving Paddy an edge, possibly, due to his grappling. But looking now, 2 to 3 years later, this is just insane. Paddy is ranked top 15, just. He's like 13, I think. Topuria is the champion of the featherweight division, and he's coming off the two, I wrote down arguably, but the two best back-to-back wins of all time, in my opinion. Alexander Volkanovski by knockout, Max Holloway by knockout. It's not like he was losing those fights that knocked him out. They were pretty close. They were they were competitive. But Ilia was definitely had the momentum in both. Man, if Paddy, the only way this fight could ever happen and be competitive is if Paddy just started going out and started mauling people, like goes out, mauls Michael Chandler, goes out, destroys Gaethje, destroys Hooker, destroys Oliveira. That's obviously a very hypothetical there, but that's the only way this fight could ever be considered competitive again. But this fight, I'd say there was like a 30% chance it was going to happen if maybe Paddy was a bit more active. And see, Paddy got slow rolled up the division and is still. Ilia did not. He was given a couple guys that beat Bryce Mitchell, beat Josh Emmett, and then was fighting for the title. So they had very different trajectory. But if they had a similar trajectory, I could have seen these guys maybe clashing. But that is number one there. Next up, this is the one that inspired me to make this video, thinking of this fight. Alexander Volkanovski versus Henry Cejudo. This fight was actually pretty close to happening. Whether you agree or disagree, I don't care. If Cejudo had beaten Aljamain Sterling, this would have been the next fight. The plan was for Henry, and he said this multiple times, before and after, that he wanted to beat Aljo and then move up and become an actual triple champion. And from memory, Volkanovski was interested as well. He would have taken the fight. The main debate in this was the size difference. Obviously, Volkanovski is usually shorter than most of his opponents, but then Henry is shorter than Volk, which is something you just never come across. He's a former flyweight. Maybe if Cejudo could bulk up and match Volk's strength, he could potentially make it competitive through his wrestling. But that's a lot of bulking. He's already gotten so much bigger than he was from flyweight, and that's a big size increase. Looking back, Volk would have manhandled the fuck out of Cejudo. Just the size and the skill. The only thing Cejudo would have had was speed, but I don't think he would be fast enough to knock out Volk or something. And Volk is really quick anyway. So Cejudo quite literally has no real path to victory. Because if Volk can perform the way he did against Islam, I can't see Cejudo even touching him. And honestly, it'd probably want to be one of his easier title defenses. Unless Cejudo just kind of showed up pretty big and just put on because Cejudo is great at adapting and he's got such determination. So I think a prime Cejudo would do okay, but I don't think it's a great fight for him. And one more thing, if you look at it like this, Cejudo and Sterling was early. It was like March, April 23. And if he had beaten Aljo, that would have set up the Volk fight, assuming Volk wants it, Cejudo wants it. And that fight would have happened a bit later in the year, around the time Islam was scheduled to face Oliveira the second time, which is when Volk stepped in. So perfect universe, Volk doesn't step in against Islam because he's booked against Cejudo. He might anyway, and it might have gotten rescheduled, but let's just say it didn't. Then Volk wouldn't have gotten knocked out by Islam in the second fight. And just, man, I can't, that's too much of a what if. What could have been, man. Next up, now this one is iconic. This is one of the biggest ones of the modern era. Khabib versus Tony. I don't really want to talk about it, but come on. We all know the history. This fight was put together 5 separate times and fell through each time. That is insane. No fight that's never happened to any fight. At the time, Tony was at the peak of his win streak, and Khabib was at the peak of his win streak. Both on 12-fight win streaks at the time, I believe. And everybody thought that Tony was the one to beat Khabib, because I remember there's all these images and stuff of, Tony, Khabib, and then all around them is everybody else in the lightweight division bloodied and knocked out from both of them. These guys just ran through pretty much the entire division, and man, I don't even know what to say. All these narratives like Khabib has never bled and Tony makes everyone bleed. There was just so much riding on this fight. And man, we truly live in the darkest timeline considering how this turned out. I'm convinced the 5th fight, which is the last one booked, caused COVID, because that's what cancelled the fight. Yeah, I'm just going to leave that one there. But man, looking back on the fight, how it would have turned out, it's easy to, kind of come up with the idea that Khabib would have destroyed Tony. Because, the last 8 fights haven't gone so well for Tony. But I think you got to remember, prime Tony wasn't shit. He didn't get lucky on in 12 fights. He was really good. He was one of the best lightweights in the world. And I do really think a peak Tony Ferguson would give Khabib a lot of trouble. Probably the most trouble Khabib has had in his career. I still think Khabib would win, probably by a late TKO or a submission, late submission. But I still think it would have been a semi-competitive fight. And obviously, Justin Gaethje fucked it up. We all can blame Justin Gaethje. He fucked it up by fucking up Tony. And Khabib retired. This really went the worst possible way. But this is one of the biggest fights that didn't happen, I believe, especially for my era of UFC. But let's continue. I got an underrated one here. I got Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. Now, this might stick out a little, but I think it's an underrated pick. I think this fight would have been amazing. This fight was booked. It was actually it got pretty close before it got cancelled. It had some good beef going into it. It was a great clash of styles and just an insane fight. This would have been the craziest round 1 in history. Just when you look at the styles. These guys, their best round is round 1, and they always just go out there and smash the other guy. They go for it. It was kind of piecing up in my mind how this fight would go. Would Chandler land the shot? Would Conor counter Chandler? And it was always like, well, maybe Chandler would use his wrestling. But then, I don't know, maybe this is coping, but I maybe feel like Chandler, because he's not known as the smartest fighter in the world. You might want to put on a show for the fans, which he's done multiple times, and just not wrestle and just try and knock out Conor. Because that would be bigger for Chandler if he knocks out Conor compared to just wrestle fucking him till they're both tired. But yeah, I think it's a great underrated pick. I think this would have been a great fight. I think now it wouldn't be as hyped because, where they're both at. But I got that one there for you. The next one this is where it kind of gets a bit, it wasn't that close to happening, but there was a lot of talks. Khabib vs GSP. This was one of the biggest fantasy matchups of this entire era. That kind of almost happened. Khabib and his father always wanted this. This was the big fight. Khabib was unstoppable, 29-0. GSP, the greatest fighter of all time, according to a lot of people, and especially of these lighter weight classes. And I don't know, GSP showed slight interest, and I think he made 155 once for some reason. Maybe it was just for fun. I don't know. But yeah, at GSP, so he could have made the weight. This would be such a high level fight. It would be insane. I think GSP would have made it competitive, even though he's a bit older. Well, he was a bit older at the time. Yeah, as I said, wasn't that close to happening, but maybe like a charity grappling event almost did, maybe a bit more likely. But I think it's just cool to look back on that this fight was discussed a lot. Right, let's quickly move on. This fight was actually booked. Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev, Nate Diaz. Man, where do I even start? This fight was booked, ready to go, and weigh-in day, Khamzat missed weight, big grin on the scale, and all the fights got rearranged. We got Diaz versus Ferguson instead. That got AI'd to make it look like Tony got submitted, even though it didn't actually happen. Khamzat submitted Holland. But come on, this was, and we all knew as soon as it was booked, this was one of the biggest mismatches ever. Sure, you can make the argument maybe Diaz survives and starts piecing up a tie at Khamzat. No, Chimaev would submit Diaz like within 30 seconds or a minute. This fight would never be close. It's probably a good thing that it didn't happen, because come on, but it's just crazy that this was booked and almost was really, really close to happening. Little quick one there, Diaz versus Khamzat. I got two more for you. Now this next one is probably the one that was furthest away from actually happening. Like GSP and Khabib was closer to happening, but I just thought it was too good not to mention. I got Sean O'Malley versus Cody Garbrandt. I just said it was too good not to mention. I show up with this. I know this wasn't that close to happening, but I just thought it was cool because they faced off. And let's look at it like this. Perfect world. Sean O'Malley goes on the run he was on. That did happen. And Cody, I don't know who he was booked against at the time, but let's just say he wins and he keeps winning, goes on this cool win streak. We're all like, hell yeah, Cody. And if they both kept winning, they would have gone for the fight because there's history, there's some cool beef here. It's a cool fight. I think a good motivated Cody, especially if he had momentum and was winning, would put up a good fight with the speed and the power. I think O'Malley would knock him out anyway, especially the Cody we have now. But I think it's a cool fight that would have been really cool if the stars aligned and happened. And I'm going to quickly go to the last one, Khabib versus Holloway. I got John Jones there just to fill up the space. Don't worry about him. This fight again was booked and got cancelled like a day or two out. I think it was right before the weigh-ins. This would not have been a fun fight at all. So I think it's a good thing that it didn't happen. This isn't a matchup, I lay in bed thinking, wow, if only we got Khabib versus Holloway. No, this would have just been a dominant Khabib performance. Holloway was not prepared for the fight. He was not prepared to fight at lightweight. It's a horrible matchup for Holloway. It's like a really bad... I don't think there's much Holloway could do. Like, he wouldn't be able to stop the takedowns. And he just doesn't have the striking style, at least then, to just, like a Justin Gaethje, try and knock out Khabib. So I think this would have been a really, really bad fight to happen. It just would have been Max getting mauled. So it's a good thing that it didn't happen. Nice one to end with. Khabib for Ally Quinter instead. The real estate agent. Hopefully Khabib found a house right after it. But yeah, that is all I got for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. That's some crazy fights that kinda did. Some of them almost happened. Some of them weren't that actually close. But thank you guys for watching. Please hit that subscribe button. Comment down below any other fights that I may have missed. Catch you in the next one.